People in the 1960s were significantly thinner than we are today, and they weren't counting calories or following fad diets. This is absolutely true. From portion sizes so small they'd shock modern restaurant goers, to family dinners that were non-negotiable daily events. In this video, we'll discover the 10 most surprising, practical, and completely forgotten diet secrets that kept people naturally slim in the 1960s. Number 10, they never snacked between meals. The idea of eating between meals was almost unthinkable in 1960s households. Kids weren't allowed to raid the pantry whenever they wanted. Adults didn't keep desk drawers full of candy bars or energy bars. The concept of grazing throughout the day simply didn't exist. And here's the thing, families didn't even have snack foods readily available in their homes. If you grew up in the 1960s, you remember the strict rule, no eating between meals, period. Your mother would tell you that snacking would ruin your appetite for dinner, and she meant it. The kitchen was essentially closed between meal times. There were no bags of chips sitting on the counter, no bowls of candy on the coffee table, no protein bars in purses or backpacks. The only time you might get a snack was a special after-school treat, maybe some homemade cookies and a glass of milk, but even that was controlled and portioned by mom. This wasn't about willpower or self-control, it was simply how people lived. Grocery stores didn't have entire aisles dedicated to snack foods like they do today. The snack food industry was still in its infancy. Doritos had just been invented in 1966. Pringles wouldn't arrive until 1968, and even when these products became available, they were treats for special occasions, not daily staples. What's fascinating is that people didn't feel deprived. They didn't experience the constant hunger we associate with not snacking today. Why? Because their meals were substantial and satisfying. They ate real food that kept them full for hours. A typical 1960s breakfast might include eggs, bacon, toast with butter, and whole milk, foods that provided lasting energy. Compare that to today's grab-and-go breakfast bar that leaves you hungry an hour later. The absence of snacking also meant people's insulin levels remained stable throughout the day. They weren't experiencing the constant blood sugar spikes and crashes that come from frequent eating. Their bodies had time to properly digest meals and tap into fat stores for energy between eating times. It's no wonder they stayed slim without trying. And here's something else. Without constant snacking, people actually enjoyed their meals more. They came to the dinner table genuinely hungry, which made food taste better and more satisfying. They practiced what we now call mindful eating without even knowing it. Every meal was an event to be savored, not just another eating occasion in an endless stream of food consumption. Number 9, portions were shockingly small. If you could travel back to a 1960s restaurant, you'd be stunned by what they considered a normal serving size. A hamburger was 3 to 4 ounces, about the size of your palm. Today's burgers regularly hit 8 to 12 ounces. A large soda was 8 ounces. Now a small is 16 ounces, and a large can be 32 ounces or more. French fries came in one size, what we'd now call small. But it wasn't just restaurant portions that were smaller. Home portions were modest too. Take a look at dinnerware from the 1960s and you'll notice something striking. The plates were significantly smaller. A typical dinner plate was 9 inches in diameter. Today's plates are often 12 inches or larger. Smaller plates naturally led to smaller portions, and people didn't feel deprived because their eyes saw a full plate. The difference is staggering when you look at specific foods. A bagel in the 1960s was about 140 calories and 3 inches in diameter. Today's bagels are often 6 inches across and pack 350 calories or more. A typical muffin was the size of a baseball. Now, they're the size of a softball. Even something as simple as a bottle of Coke went from 6.5 ounces to today's standard 20-ounce bottles. Movie theaters provide perhaps the most dramatic example. In the 1960s, a large popcorn was about 5 cups and contained 270 calories. Today's large popcorns hold 20 cups and contain over 1,200 calories. And here's the kicker. People in the 1960s shared that 5-cup popcorn. It was meant for 2 or 3 people, not one person. What's remarkable is that people felt satisfied with these smaller portions. They didn't leave restaurants feeling hungry or deprived. They cleaned their plates, another common practice of the era, but their plates contained reasonable amounts of food. The phrase supersize didn't exist because no one had conceived of needing that much food in one sitting. Research now shows that we eat more when we're served more, regardless of hunger. It's called the portion size effect, and it's powerful. People in the 1960s were naturally protected from overeating simply because they weren't presented with enormous amounts of food. They ate until they were satisfied, not stuffed, because that's all that was available. Even packaged foods came in smaller sizes. A standard bag of chips was 1 ounce. Ice cream came in pints, not gallons. Candy bars were half the size of today's versions. Families would split a pint of ice cream for dessert, with each person getting a small small scoop. Today, we think nothing of eating an entire pint by ourselves. The value sizing that dominates today's food landscape simply didn't exist. Restaurants competed on quality and taste, not quantity. Getting more for your money meant getting better food, not just more food. And people's waistlines reflected this different approach to eating. Number 8, everyone walked everywhere. In the 1960s America, walking wasn't considered exercise, it was just how you got around. Kids walked to school, sometimes over a mile each way. Adults walked to the corner store, to church, to visit neighbors. Nobody thought twice about it. Walking was simply part of daily life, not something you had to schedule or plan. The numbers are striking. In the 1960s, 48% of children walked or biked to school. Today, less than 13%. Adults averaged about 7,000 to 10,000 steps daily just through their regular activities. They didn't own Fitbits or count steps, they just moved because life required it. And this constant low-level activity had a profound impact on their metabolism and weight. Consider a typical 1960s housewife's day. She didn't have a dishwasher, so she stood and washed dishes by hand 3 times a day. No electric garage door meant getting out of the car to open it manually. Laundry involved carrying baskets up and down stairs, hanging clothes on the line, and plenty of bending and stretching. Vacuum cleaners were heavier and required more physical effort. Even simple tasks like chopping vegetables or mixing batter were done by hand, not by food processors or stand mixers. Men were equally active. Power tools were less common, so yard work meant pushing a manual mower, raking by hand, and doing home repairs with basic tools. Office workers might walk to the bus stop, climb stairs to their office, and walk to lunch. There were no remote controls, so you got up to change the TV channel. No cordless phones meant walking to answer calls. Every aspect of life required more movement. Shopping was a physical activity too. There were no mega stores where you could park once and get everything. You walked from the butcher to the baker to the grocery store. You carried your purchases home or to your car. Shopping carts were smaller and you couldn't buy in bulk because you had to carry everything. Even inside stores, you walked more because stores were smaller and more specialized. This constant movement wasn't strenuous. People weren't sweating or out of breath. It was just gentle, consistent activity throughout the day. Exactly what modern research shows is ideal for maintaining a healthy weight. They achieved what fitness experts now call NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, without even trying. The suburbs were more walkable then too. Sidewalks were standard in new developments, corner stores dotted neighborhoods. Kids could walk to baseball practice or the local swimming pool. The car was for longer trips, not for every minor errand. Families often shared one car, which meant walking was sometimes the only option. What's particularly interesting is that people didn't feel like they were exercising. They weren't checking off a workout for the day. Movement was seamlessly integrated into their daily routines. They burned calories consistently throughout the day rather than sitting for hours and then trying to make up for it with an intense gym session. Number 7. Family dinners were sacred. At 6 p.m. sharp in households across America, something remarkable happened. Everyone sat down together for dinner. No exceptions, no excuses. Dad was home from work, mom had prepared the meal, and kids knew better than to make other plans. This wasn't just about food, it was a daily ritual that profoundly affected how people ate. The dining table was command central for family life. No TV trays in front of the television, no eating in bedrooms, no grabbing food on the go. Everyone sat at the actual dining table, used proper plates and silverware, and stayed until everyone was finished. It was as regular and predictable as the sunrise, and it shaped entire generations' relationships with food. These meals followed a predictable pattern. Mom spent the afternoon preparing dinner from scratch. The table was set properly, placemats, napkins, sometimes even the good china for Sunday dinner. When Dad walked through the door, dinner was nearly ready. Kids were called from their homework or play, hands were washed, and everyone took their assigned seats. The meal itself was an event. Families said grace, or at least waited for everyone to be served before eating. Conversation flowed about school, work, neighborhood news. The TV was off. The radio might play softly in the background, but the focus was on the family and the food. Parents asked about homework and friends. Siblings teased each other. Problems were discussed and solved over pot roast and mashed potatoes. What's crucial is how this affected eating behavior. People ate slowly because they were talking. They put their forks down between bites to answer questions or tell stories. They naturally practiced what we now call mindful eating because the meal was about more than just consuming calories. It was about connection, communication, and community. Portions were controlled too. Mom served the plates in the kitchen or Dad carved the roast at the table. You got one reasonable serving. Seconds were available, but you had to ask. And by then, the conversation and time passing meant you'd realize you were actually full. The vegetables got eaten because Mom insisted, and dessert was contingent on cleaning your plate. These dinners typically lasted 30 to 45 minutes. That's significant because it takes about 20 minutes for your brain to register fullness. People People had time to feel satisfied before they overate. Compare that to today's rushed meals eaten in cars, at desks, or standing over the sink. We can consume hundreds of calories before our bodies even register we've eaten. The predictability mattered too. When you knew dinner was at 6 p.m. every night, you didn't snack at 5:30, you didn't grab fast food on the way home. Your body developed a rhythm expecting food at certain times and not constantly seeking it. This regular schedule helped regulate metabolism and hunger hormones in ways we're only now beginning to understand. Number 6, they cooked everything from scratch. In 1960s kitchens, something remarkable happened every single day. Real cooking. Not reheating, not assembling. Actual cooking from basic ingredients. The typical housewife spent over 2 hours a day preparing meals, and while that might sound like drudgery to modern ears, it was the secret to keeping families thin without trying. Here's what a typical 1960s pantry looked like. Flour, sugar, butter, eggs, milk, potatoes, onions, carrots. Basic ingredients that required transformation to become meals. There were no frozen dinners taking up freezer space, no boxes of pre-made anything. Even something as simple as salad dressing was made fresh. Oil, vinegar, and herbs shaken together in a jar. The morning started with a real breakfast. Mom cracked actual eggs into a skillet. She toasted bread, real bread from the baker, not the sugar-laden stuff that passes for bread today. Bacon sizzled in the pan. Oatmeal bubbled on the stove, made from real oats, not instant packets loaded with sugar and artificial flavors. Orange juice meant squeezing oranges, not opening a carton of sugar water. Lunch might be simpler, a sandwich and soup, but even then, the soup was often homemade, simmering on the stove from yesterday's chicken bones. The sandwich featured real sliced meat from the butcher, not processed lunch meat pumped full of sodium and preservatives. Vegetables came from cans sometimes, sure, but they were just vegetables, not swimming in sugary sauces or cheese-like substances. But dinner was where the real magic happened. A typical weeknight meal might be pot roast with vegetables all cooked together in one pot. The meat came from the butcher, wrapped in white paper. The vegetables were peeled and chopped by hand. Potatoes were real potatoes mashed with butter and milk, not reconstituted from a box. Even convenience foods like TV dinners, which were just gaining popularity, contained real food, just frozen. This matters because when you cook from scratch, you control every ingredient. There's no high fructose corn syrup hiding in your spaghetti sauce because you made it from tomatoes, onions, and garlic. There are no mysterious chemicals you can't pronounce because you can see everything that goes into the pot. The sugar content is what you add, not what some food scientists calculated would make you crave more. Cooking from scratch also naturally limited portions. Making a cake was an event that required time and effort. Creaming butter and sugar by hand, carefully measuring flour, watching the oven. You didn't make 3 cakes a week, you made one for Sunday, and everyone got one modest slice. Cookies were a sometimes treat that required rolling dough and cutting shapes, not something you grabbed from a package whenever you walked through the kitchen. The time investment mattered too. When mom spent an hour making dinner, the family respected that effort. You didn't waste food. You didn't demand something different. You ate what was served and appreciated it. The investment of time and energy in cooking created an investment in eating properly. And here's something we've forgotten. Cooking from scratch meant food tasted like food. A tomato tasted like a tomato. Chicken tasted like chicken. When food has real flavor, you need less of it to feel satisfied. You don't need to drown everything in sauce or cheese or sugar to make it palatable. Simple preparations highlighted natural flavors, and people's palates were attuned to subtle tastes we've lost in our world of extreme flavors. Number 5, sugar was an occasional treat. In 1960s, households, sugar occupied a very different place than it does today. It was special, it was controlled, it was something for birthdays and holidays, not a daily entitlement. Kids didn't have access to unlimited sweets, and adults didn't consider dessert a necessary end to every meal. Sugar was a treat, and that made all the difference. The numbers tell the story. In 1960, Americans consumed about 12 teaspoons of added sugar per day. Today, we average 22 teaspoons daily, but even those numbers don't capture the full picture because sugar in the 1960s came from obvious sources. The sugar bowl, candy, and homemade desserts. Today, sugar hides everywhere. In bread, in pasta sauce, in healthy yogurt, in salad dressing. A child's relationship with sugar was completely different. Birthday cake was special because you only had it a few times a year. Halloween candy was parceled out over weeks, not devoured in days. A piece of penny candy from the corner store was a big deal. Soda was for special occasions, Sunday dinner or a birthday party, not a daily beverage. Kids drank milk or water with meals, period. Even when families had dessert, portions were modest. A sliver of pie, not a quarter of the pie. One small scoop of ice cream, not a bowl full. Cookies were 2 or 3, not half a sleeve. And here's the key. Dessert followed a full meal of real food. You'd already eaten pot roast, vegetables, and potatoes. The sweet was truly just a small finish, not a meal in itself. Breakfast cereals illustrate the change perfectly. In the 1960s, kids ate cornflakes, Rice Krispies, or Cheerios, cereals with 1 to 3 grams of sugar per serving. Sugar-coated cereals existed but were considered treats, not daily breakfast foods. Parents added a teaspoon of sugar to plain cereal if needed. Compare that to today's breakfast cereals that can pack 20 grams of sugar per serving, more than a glazed donut. The soda evolution is even more dramatic. In 1960, Coca-Cola came in 6.5-ounce bottles. That's it. That was the serving size. Today's 20-ounce bottles contain 65 grams of sugar, more than 3 times the total daily sugar intake of a 1960s American. And people didn't drink soda daily. It was a Friday night treat or something you had at a restaurant, not a beverage to wash down every meal. What's fascinating is that people didn't feel deprived. Because sugar was special, it retained its impact. A homemade chocolate chip cookie was genuinely exciting. A slice of mom's apple pie was worth savoring. When you don't have sugar constantly, your palate stays sensitive to sweetness. Foods we'd consider bland today tasted perfectly sweet to 1960s palates. The absence of hidden sugars made a huge difference too. Spaghetti sauce was tomatoes and herb, not a sugar delivery system. Bread was flour, water, yeast, and salt, not the sweet cake-like substance sold as bread today. Peanut butter was just peanuts and salt. Without sugar lurking in every processed food, people's total consumption stayed naturally low. This limited sugar intake had profound effects on weight. Without constant blood sugar spikes and crashes, people didn't experience the cravings and energy swings that drive overeating. Their bodies burned fat more efficiently because they weren't constantly processing sugar, and perhaps most importantly, they didn't develop the sugar addiction that plagues modern eaters. Number 4, they ate on a schedule.
With our craftsmanship and our conscientious control, we build for utility.
Clock watching had a completely different meaning in 1960s households. Breakfast was at 7, lunch was at noon, dinner was at 6. These weren't suggestions or rough guidelines, they were as fixed as train schedules. And this predictable eating pattern, boring as it might sound, was a powerful tool for maintaining healthy weight. The day started with breakfast and everyone ate it, not grabbed it, not skipped it, not replaced it with coffee, actually sat down and ate it. Dad read the paper while eating eggs and toast. Kids ate cereal or oatmeal before school. Mom joined them with her own plate. Missing breakfast was as unthinkable as going to school in your pajamas. It simply wasn't done. Lunch happened at noon, whether you were at work, school, or home. Factory whistles blew, school bells rang, and office workers filed out to lunch counters. You didn't eat at your desk while working. You didn't skip lunch to finish a project. The whole world stopped for lunch and everyone participated. Even busy executives took a proper lunch hour. Then came dinner at 6 p.m. sharp, the main event we've already discussed. But here's what's crucial. Between these meals, nothing. The kitchen was closed. Offices didn't have snack rooms. Schools didn't have vending machines. You ate at meal times, and that was it. Your body learned this rhythm and adapted to it perfectly. This scheduling did something remarkable to human metabolism. Bodies knew when food was coming and prepared accordingly. Digestive juices started flowing before meals. Insulin sensitivity remained high because it wasn't constantly challenged. The migrating motor complex, the digestive system's cleaning wave, had time to work between meals, keeping the gut healthy. The predictability also eliminated decision fatigue around food. You didn't spend mental energy wondering when or what to eat. You didn't graze mindlessly because you weren't sure if you were hungry. Meals were events with beginnings and endings, not a constant flow of food. This created natural fasting periods that we now know are crucial for metabolic health. Even social eating followed schedules. Coffee breaks happened at 10 a.m. and 3 p.m., and they were just coffee, maybe with a simple cookie. Church socials, dinner parties, and restaurant meals were planned events, not spontaneous food encounters. The 24-hour eating opportunity simply didn't exist. What's particularly interesting is how this affected hunger patterns. People got genuinely hungry before meals, which made food taste better and satisfaction easier to achieve. They didn't eat from boredom, stress, or habit. They ate because it was mealtime and they were hungry. This natural alignment of hunger and eating is something many modern eaters have completely lost. The scheduled eating also promoted better sleep patterns. Dinner at 6 meant digestion was largely complete by bedtime at 10. People didn't lie down with full stomachs or suffer from acid reflux. They didn't raid the refrigerator at midnight because they'd eaten properly during the day. The body's circadian rhythms aligned with eating patterns in a way that promoted both good sleep and healthy weight. This might be the hardest 1960s habit for modern people to adopt given our 24/7 culture, but the principle remains powerful. Eating at consistent times times trains your body to expect and properly process food. It eliminates the constant grazing that leads to overconsumption, and it restores eating to its proper place as a necessary and enjoyable part of life, not life's main event. Number 3, fresh food was the only option. Walk into a 1960s grocery store and you'd be struck by what wasn't there as much as what was. No freezer section taking up half the store. No aisles of boxed dinners and instant everything. No refrigerated cases full of pre-cut, pre-washed, pre-everything produce. Instead, you'd find actual food, the kind that spoiled if you didn't use it quickly. The produce section was seasonal and local. Strawberries in June, apples in fall, root vegetables in winter. You couldn't get asparagus in December or peaches in January. This wasn't deprivation, it was normal. People ate what grew nearby when it grew, which meant produce was picked ripe and traveled short distances. A tomato actually tasted like a tomato because it was a real tomato, not a tennis ball bred for shipping. Shopping happened several times a week because food didn't last. Without preservatives, bread got stale in days. Milk soured within a week. Meat needed to be cooked within a couple of days or frozen in the small freezer compartment. This frequent shopping meant people bought what they needed for immediate use, not stockpiling processed foods that could sit in pantries for months. The butcher shop was where meat came from, not pre-packaged in plastic wrap, but cut to order by someone who knew your name. You'd ask for 2 pounds of ground beef or 4 pork chops, and that's what you'd get. The meat was often from local farms, grass-fed by default because grain feeding wasn't yet standard. It was leaner, more flavorful, and you knew exactly where it came from. Vegetables came with dirt on them. Carrots had their greens attached. Lettuce was whole heads, not pre-washed bags. This meant food preparation took time, but it also meant you were connected to your food. You washed it, peeled it, chopped it. You saw exactly what you were eating. No mysterious ingredients, no chemical washes, no waxes to make things shiny. The dairy was different too. Milk came in glass bottles delivered by the milkman. It was whole milk with cream that rose to the top. Cheese meant cheddar or Swiss, not processed cheese product. Yogurt was barely known, and when it appeared, it was plain and tart, not the sugar-laden dessert it's become. Butter was butter, not margarine or spread or any of the frankenfats we've created. What's crucial is that this fresh food was naturally more filling and nutritious. A real potato with its fiber and nutrients intact kept you full longer than instant mashed potatoes. Fresh vegetables had more vitamins because they hadn't been sitting in warehouses for weeks. Whole grain bread had substance. You couldn't eat 6 slices without noticing. The limited processing also meant limited additives designed to make you eat more. No MSG enhancing flavors to supernatural levels. No added sugars making everything hyper-palatable. No engineered combinations of salt, sugar, and fat calculated to hit your bliss point. Food tasted like food, and when it satisfied your body's actual nutritional needs, you naturally ate less. This fresh food focus created a natural barrier to overeating too. You couldn't binge on ice cream because you only had a pint for the whole family. You couldn't mindlessly snack on chips because they weren't sitting in the pantry. Fresh food required intentional preparation and conscious eating. It spoiled if ignored, so you planned meals and ate what you bought. The irony is that this limited food environment created more food security, not less. People knew how to cook whatever was available. They weren't dependent on specific products or brands. A 1960s cook could walk into any grocery store and make dinner from whatever was fresh and available. That's a food skill we've largely lost in our world of infinite processed options. Number 2, physical work was normal. In the 1960s America, burning calories wasn't something you did at the gym, it was called daily life. Men came home physically tired from jobs that required actual movement. Women spent their days in constant motion keeping house. Kids played outside until dark. Everyone burned calories just living without ever thinking about exercise as a separate category. Let's start with work. In 1960, far more Americans worked in manufacturing, construction, and agriculture. Even office jobs required more movement. Filing meant walking to file cabinets. Research meant trips to the library. Meetings meant walking to conference rooms. There were no emails, so you walked to colleagues' desks. No printers at every desk meant trips to the copy room. Men in factories stood all day, lifted boxes, operated machinery with their muscles, not buttons. Housework was a full-body workout disguised as daily chores. Monday was wash day, and that meant sorting, washing, wringing, carrying wet laundry to the line, hanging it up, taking it down, folding, and putting away. No permanent press meant hours of ironing. Cleaning meant getting on your knees to scrub floors floors, reaching to dust, pushing heavy vacuum cleaners. Even cooking was more physical, kneading bread, whipping cream by hand, grinding meat. The statistics are staggering. A 1960s housewife burned an estimated 1,000 calories more per day than her modern counterpart just doing housework. Think about that. That's like running 10 miles, except it was spread throughout the day in natural movement. No wonder they didn't need gym memberships. Kids lived differently too. After school meant playing outside until dinner. Bikes were transportation, not exercise equipment. Games meant running, jumping, climbing trees. The president's physical fitness test introduced by JFK wasn't necessary because kids were already fit. It was just measuring what came naturally. There were no video games, limited TV watching, and computers didn't exist. Entertainment meant movement. Even leisure was more active. Family outings meant picnics with badminton and frisbee, not sitting in movie theaters. Weekends involved yard work, gardening, home repair projects. Dancing was a popular social activity. Bowling leagues thrived. People played tennis and golf not as exercise, but as social activities. Movement was woven into the fabric of fun. The suburbs contributed too, paradoxically. Yes, they were car dependent, but houses required maintenance. Lawns needed mowing with push mowers. Gardens were common. Driveways needed shoveling. Dads spent Saturdays fixing, building, and maintaining. The suburban dream came with a built-in exercise program called home ownership. Shopping was exercise too. Grocery carts were smaller and heavier. You carried groceries to the car, then from the car to the house. Department stores meant walking through multiple floors. Escalators were rare, and elevators were for the elderly. You tried on clothes in the store because returning things was a hassle, which meant more walking and movement. The cumulative effect was profound. People burned calories constantly throughout the day, not in intense bursts at the gym. This steady, moderate activity is exactly what human bodies are designed for. It kept metabolisms humming, muscles engaged, and weight stable without conscious effort. People didn't count steps because every day guaranteed thousands of them. What's particularly important is that this activity felt productive, not punitive. You weren't walking on a treadmill going nowhere. You were accomplishing tasks. The calories burned were a byproduct of living, not the goal. This psychological difference matters. Movement was associated with accomplishment and purpose, not obligation and guilt. Number 1, they rarely ate out.
Just as ready, and there's that bird, a delicacy to feature.
Here's the most powerful diet secret from the 1960s. Restaurant meals were special occasions, not daily occurrences. The average family ate out maybe once a month, if that. This single fact might explain more about 1960s thinness than any other factor, because it meant near total control over what went into their bodies. The numbers are shocking by today's standards. In 1960, Americans spent about 25% of their food budget on eating out. Today, nearly 50%. But even that understates the change, because eating out meant something different then. It meant sitting down at a restaurant for a special occasion, an anniversary, a birthday, a celebration. It didn't mean grabbing fast food for lunch every day or ordering takeout 3 nights a week. Fast food existed but occupied a tiny corner of the food landscape. McDonald's had only 228 locations in 1960. Today they have over 14,000 in the US alone. Eating at McDonald's was a treat for kids, maybe after a school event or on a road trip. No one considered it a meal solution for busy weeknights. The idea of eating fast food multiple times per week would have seemed not just unhealthy, but absurd. When families did eat out, it was an event. Kids wore their good clothes, parents made reservations. You sat at a table with a tablecloth and real silverware. A waitress took your order and brought your food on actual plates. The meal took an hour or more. It cost enough that you thought twice about doing it often. This wasn't casual dining, it was special occasion dining. The restaurant meals themselves were different too. Portions were smaller, as we've discussed, but also restaurants cooked more like home cooks. They used real ingredients, not pre-made sauces and frozen components. A restaurant kitchen in 1960 looked a lot like a home kitchen, just bigger. The food was richer than home cooking, certainly, but it was still recognizable as food. The absence of restaurant eating meant families controlled their nutrition completely. They knew every ingredient in every meal because they put it there. They controlled portions because they served the plates. They controlled timing because they decided when dinner was ready. They controlled quality because they bought the ingredients. This level of control is almost impossible to achieve when eating out regularly. Work lunches showed the biggest difference. Men carried lunch boxes or lunch pails with sandwiches wrapped in wax paper. Women who worked packed similar lunches. The idea of buying lunch every day was foreign to most workers. It was expensive and impractical. There simply weren't enough restaurants near most workplaces to make it feasible. You ate what you brought from home. Even coffee breaks were different. Office workers might grab coffee from a cart or the break room, but it was just coffee. Black or with real cream and sugar, you added yourself. There were no 500-calorie coffee drinks. No muffins the size of softballs. No constant grazing on food food brought in by coworkers or provided by employers. Work was for working, not eating. This pattern created a powerful feedback loop. Because people rarely ate out, they became better home cooks. Because they were better home cooks, restaurant food seemed less necessary. Because restaurant meals were expensive and special, they remained occasional treats rather than becoming routine. The skills and habits reinforced each other. The health implications were enormous. Restaurant food has always been richer, saltier, and more caloric than home cooking. It has to be. That's what makes it special. But when you only eat it once a month, your body can handle it. When you eat it several times a week, those extra calories, sodium, and unhealthy fats accumulate. The difference between special occasion indulgence and regular consumption is the difference between pleasure and poison. And that's all, folks. Health seekers, these were the 10 most surprising, practical, and completely forgotten diet secrets that kept people naturally slim in the 1960s. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future updates. And here's another video I've specially selected for you. See you next time.